Hello and welcome to Higher Ground. I've got a couple of fabulous guests today and would like to introduce you to Kim and to Jennifer. And I'm Buck. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah.
Same here.
Thank
And
you.
I know we've been talking about let's get together and do this, and here we are. Here we are. And hopefully get a chance to share with whoever tunes in what it is that the two of you do with, let's say, the terrain of essence training. Maybe.
Yeah, terrain of essence teaching.
There you go,
Right.
thank you.
Yeah. It's
Maybe
school.
a little background or a little history of how you've come to where you are today.
Oh my gosh. Let's say I began as a young adult. I had an identity crisis. I had been a professional dancer in a company and was in a car accident. So my career ended short. I was a soloist for a company. It was so devastating. I had danced since I was 4. So my entire identity was around dance. And suddenly I couldn't dance. And I've never been able to go back to that level, right? And so I had skipped college to get into this troupe and perform and made a living
Nice.
as a modern dancer in a small company. And you know, I was at a casting party, and we were supported by Ford Foundation and National Endowment of the Arts, Smithsonian, and all of that. And at the cast party, they're like, "Lincoln, what are you going to do?" And I'm like, I have no idea. To even teach dance right now, my body just felt so debilitated. So he suggested I audition for a Levi's commercial, and I did. And before I knew it, I had 6 agents in town. I know.
Wow.
And I had,
Wow.
I'm going to just say honestly, as a stage artist, that was like the lowliest thing to do, right? So I felt like I was selling out, and it ended up being a fantastic career for 15 years. It was very fun. I didn't run into all that negative stuff like you hear about. But
Fantastic.
what did happen, my agent said, if you can do something about your voice. I had this high squeaky voice. And so she sent me to a voice coach. And during the exercises and presencing, I became a basket case. And I realized then I really needed help. I needed a different way. And that turned me, she introduced me to her teacher, who then became my teacher. 23 years.
Wow.
He and his friend developed a work where I learned presencing. And that was through the Diamond approach and Diamondlogos teachings. And then I broke off from the school and developed my own work that brought together presencing, our essence, along with more somatic work, trauma work.
You have a couple of
integrating that.
examples, a couple of examples of that, would you say? Could you provide with the,
Examples
of the presencing and with trauma, let's say? Well, you experienced it
yeah.
yourself.
Well, let's say when we're in a meditative state, if a person experiences a sense of spaciousness, that can trigger dissociation for somebody in trauma. And so I realized spirituality and the somatic work needed to come together in a different way than it had. And my teachers had attempted that edge, but I felt there was more to go. Yeah, and so it's really learning to titrate these edges. So I bring different skills into the practice with my students.
Easier said than done, though, right?
Yes.
Just your own personal experience.
Yes.
And that idea of when a door closes,
Right.
what happened, right? A couple of times.
Oh my gosh. You know, because our identity is ego-based, and then spirituality is essence-based. And where those two merge is really a tricky territory. And learning to titrate or bridge those edges so that we don't lose people, right? Right? And so that people can begin to live their work. So it's a real integrative process. And it's
So
a slow
important.
process.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hopefully so, right? I mean, it's
Yes,
practically speaking.
exactly. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when we talk about, let's say, the name of the show being higher ground, you're really describing a situation and situations where someone may not be thinking about that consciously, but really evolving, right? And what would you say? How would you describe higher ground?
Higher ground. Well, our soul, which is embodied, is our conscience. Yet if we've had trauma that it feels unsafe to be in our trauma, then we don't have the guidance of our conscience, right? And that's a really important piece to bring together the felt sense and then the higher mind, right? That's a lot of territory to navigate.
But
Right.
that's exactly what's taking place, right? With different
Yes.
workshops that you're doing.
Integrating the three centers, the mind, the heart, the instinct. And then as we learn to come into proximity with all three intelligences, which is an ancient, ancient tradition, by the way, and science has just discovered it. Right?
Amazing, huh?
At
Right,
least
yes.
since the 60s, right? But more popular in the recent years. But as we integrate this, we begin to feel more of a sense of wholeness. And as a result, there's integrity because it's integral, right? And so we begin to measure our thoughts. Are my thoughts and my feelings and my actions congruent, right? And that's really big inner work.
Absolutely.
But that's the higher ground. And then it brings us into our soul space more and more. And then, you know, the divine isn't something out there that I'm reaching for and I have to suffer through life for. That I have access to this all the time.
What a discovery, huh?
Yeah. But knowing how is the issue. And I'm writing a book.
Which
And a
is?
workbook, Soul Power, You Loving You.
Ooh.
And then I have a workbook that is working with the map of you. And then the workbook will walk people through some of these processes.
And that's
Yeah.
what the workshops are and the trainings that you do, is what it sounds like,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Yes.
I teach 3-year training intensives, weekend workshops open to the public, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then
And I think we have one of
practitioner
your-
trainings.
yes,
One of
yes.
my teachers.
Exactly.
And Jennifer is a teacher in her own right. But it's beautiful to work with people that have developed themselves, and then they integrate the work, right? Yeah.
So how would you describe that, Jennifer? That process?
Yeah, it's happening right as we speak. The integration, it's constant. So yeah, I mean, when you're asking about higher ground, what comes to mind right away is the world of the dual. We have above and below, what's higher, what's lower. And so this navigation of these dualities is something that's happening constantly in the heart and the mind and the instinct, all three centers, and also other directions. And it is, when you talk about titration, it's exciting. It's a very dynamic process, the whole thing, which as an artist I really relate to. There's a lot of movement in the works that I do, and to play with color and movement. And the essence of anything is such a joy. So it's all about the present. And I echo Kim in terms of the integrity of it. I love this word integrity because it not only means, we are in our highest conscience, but we're also integrated. So there's this resilience. And there's this movement or the titration that you talked of where, if there is above and below, well, what's in between? And where do the two meet? And what else is there besides above and below? And then we start to feel the integration.
Wow, what an experience, huh?
In a nutshell, that's the work.
Fantastic.
And it sounds really easy.
And there it is. Can you describe how, everybody's not going to kind of get from A to B smoothly sometimes, so.
Some people can't even feel their body.
Yeah.
And so you ask them what's present, what do you feel? And then, right, they look at you with these pleading eyes that first they're embarrassed to say they don't feel anything, and then they say nothing. And we're like, oh my God, that's incredible. Because that is a sense of nothingness. And so that is something, right? And to begin to welcome that.
It's kind of the liftoff point, right? The starting point.
Yeah.
That's going to be pretty incredible too.
And that's very common. Yeah, more common than not for the beginning. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's in a kind of a different kind of way of training, but you're kind of allowing that person to discover for themselves how can I feel something, or if that is where I'm going to go. But that's part of the guidance, isn't it? Part of what you offer.
It is, and what's so amazing is the body is instinct. It's the limbic brain, the lower, right? But it also stores everything that has ever happened to us. The body does not forget, right? Everything is registered here, including ancestral through our DNA. And so to feel the body can be so overwhelming for some people that just to feel the body feels traumatic and then they freeze. And we know that numbness, which is similar to nothing, comes from years and years of pain, right?
Yes.
And so we're wanting to touch that delicately and slowly and through invitation. And really I say that the client is always right? That they are showing you the pace they can go and where their awareness is.
And that is so critical, isn't it? To hear that, to listen to that, to see that, isn't it? And not to, because I would just said something of kind of pushing somebody along. You don't want to do that.
Yeah, and it requires a lot of humility on the side of the practitioner, because you may have an insight and think you know, or have a true insight like a wisdom, a guidance, but still you have to sit and wait, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome in itself too, isn't it? I mean, that's really, I know it's for the individual, but you're a part of that process. And we are, as we're helping somebody move through. So it's, what an incredible gift.
Right.
And patience, right? Like you said, I might have a way that we can work through this, but maybe this isn't the right time.
Right, and I'm imagining that's the wisdom that brought you to this program and the way that you work.
Try to, yes, yes. Yeah, and that's it, like coming around this time of what am I here to do? And one of those things is to listen.
Right.
And be there, be present, and the presencing.
Right, it's interesting, this work is very ancient, And the listening is of the heart center, and the virtue is compassion, but the actual sense organ related here is sound. And so we're hearing through our heart, right? And already that opens this ground, right? And this is a horizontal ground, whereas the witness and the seer is more of a vertical access, right?
When do we get there?
That's always
yes.
operating.
Yeah.
And especially when we're out of our own way in dreams, right? And imaginal realm, right? Art and writing, beautiful ways to access.
Isn't it though? Yeah, where maybe I can't vocalize it, but
Right.
here's another way I can show you or kind of let you know, here's what's going on,
Right.
which is incredible. Just kind of tapping into, it's all there, but how am I going to get it out in so many different ways?
Oh my God, that's it. And all the different ways. I mean, that's one of the things in this work we want for anybody that comes into the work is to have a network of practitioners so that they're held in all the different dimensions. In the beginning, I tried to do it all in a workshop, and you just can't, and it's not even kind. Right? It's just too much, too fast. And to have people have a network, right?
So important, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
I might feel more comfortable with so-and-so to talk about this or to do a piece of it. And that's what I was running through my mind is if you've got a group of, say, 10 individuals in a training and somebody needs a little bit more attention,
Yeah.
it's how do you work all that out, right?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
later, like you said, maybe making those referrals.
Definitely. Definitely.
So you mentioned weekend workshops that you're doing. How else do you provide what you're...
One-on-one, just private presencing. At this point in time, my schedule is overfull. I have a 2-year waiting list.
Wow, yes.
So all new people now, I'm referring to my teachers, like Jennifer and Susan. And then on my website, I have a page of practitioners. And then there are more that aren't up there yet. But it's really exciting for me to share the work and to know that there are others here that are practicing in this way. It's a very unique work. The practitioners have a minimum of 650 hours training, a minimum. Most of them have 1,000, 2,000 plus.
And it takes some time, doesn't it? Because it's like
Years.
getting licensed, if you would, of doing the practical hours, yeah.
Yeah,
Years, exactly.
yeah,
So it takes some time to, in a sense, groom some
the skills.
teacher, yeah.
Right. And then people have to be congruent in their personal life. So if they're acting out in classes with poor behavior, even if they have all the training, sadly, I can't refer that, right? And so then the people that get to be a part of this, I mean, that sounds strange, get to, but there's a lot that goes into this, a lot of consideration on so many levels, that it's not like just because somebody takes the classes they get to do that. They can, outside of the school, do whatever they want, and I totally support that. But for me to refer people, it's pretty stringent. Yeah, I hold people's feet to the fire. I ask for a lot of accountability. Yeah.
And that's the nature of what you're really doing, though, right? And hopefully that it shouldn't, you would think it would be a given, but you really need to.
Absolutely. It's
sure.
the foundation is commitment and showing up
Yeah.
to the truth, right? And owning the truth.
And that's from who is leading the session. So, there's so much that's
Yeah.
going on, isn't there? It's just incredible.
It is pretty high accountability, and then we're human and we make human mistakes, but can we be accountable, for our flaws, right? Like I forget, sometimes I don't answer emails fast enough for people, right?
And I can only imagine how many are coming at you too. So,
Yeah,
it's practical of only so many hours in the day.
That's right.
And you're writing a book, and it sounds like another one's about ready to come
Working
out.
on 3
Yeah.
teacher trainings, practitioner trainings, classes, and privates. It's overfull. When really at my age, all my friends are retired. I feel like life is just beginning.
Isn't that wonderful, huh?
It is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, but it's rich, and I feel so blessed to have people like yourself, Jennifer, that have been passionate and have also continued other trainings to just enrich the self, right?
It's almost like there's never enough, right? There's always something else that I really could use here, because you never know in a given moment. Here it is, I can use this.
Let's say we're polishing our jewels, right? You're polishing the diamond, right? So that there's more clarity in any area that we ourselves feel. We just need a little more polishing, right?
And that's what discover, right?
Yeah.
And I can say that for myself. It's like there's so much to learn. There's just not enough time. And
Yeah.
talk about the polishing, yeah.
Enlightenment is not getting there. We're always in light. We're always in light, right?
And that is such a concept in itself of getting to that place where you can say, I'm there. I'm always in light. So it's almost
Right.
like thinking too much about down the road. It's like right now.
Right, because the down the road perpetuates the separation and the pain, right? The duality.
Definitely. So, wonder about times where maybe questions might come up or something happen in a training, more for the presenters, if you would, and the teachers, but it's kind of collaborating or staffing, if you would, talking about, I came up against this right here. How do you usually work through those kinds of things?
Yeah. I'm sure we have an example, huh? Lots of them.
Lots of them.
Yeah.
But you do that, right?
We do.
Yeah.
Jennifer and Susan, Zoom meetings or in-person meeting. Yeah, there's follow-up and then the practitioners, we have an ongoing support group, where we continue to meet.
Nice.
Even when they've done all the requirements. Yeah. Again, it's a place to check in and be ever evolving. Right.
Again, very important, isn't it? Because it's not always just status quo. I hope it's not. There's always something brewing,
It is.
and I want to be a part of that so I can share that.
Right.
So you're always adding to your own skills and abilities.
Right.
Yeah. Definitely.
So how was that experience for you, would you say?
Oh, it's incredible. It's going through the 3-year training with you was profound. I mean, just very much of a life changer. A lot of things shifted, and it was really like a remembering process. We talk about integration, and when things are split inside of ourselves, which for most of us happens a lot. We compartmentalize And then as we sort of remember what and who and how we actually are, then that alignment is not something we can argue with. So then these life changes kind of fall into place. And so the 3 years were profound for me, and then coming into learning more from you and then the other students, and the practice of not only with myself but with other students, and then applying some of the other trainings that I have with that. And it gets hot real fast, because there are a lot of things that get triggered as we move out into taking on more and being engaged with more community and having more relationships. And it's all there for us to kind of push any buttons that are waiting. and so as Susan and I have been teaching and leading groups, let's say we're going to teach about a certain essence, and we're studying our notes and we're talking to each other and we're going, oh yeah, here's the agenda, here's the plan, and we've got it all scheduled and figured out mentally, right? Well, then all of a sudden life happens and we're in that particular essence full on, and there's no escape. Whereas in the training, it was kind of like, yeah, I'm a student, I'm in training. And now it's sort of like the training wheels are off, and you're on the bike, and if you're going too fast, you're definitely going to fall. And so we practice falling, and we practice making fun of ourselves, and enjoying each other and learning from each other and trusting, and the people in this community are so incredible. I mean, talk about integrity. It's such an honor to be part of it and to be able to trust each other and be available. Yeah.
Definitely. Wow.
Right. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun. We talk about remembering. The word thicker or thicker, right, is like a chant of remembering one's essence, right, in the Middle Eastern and Far Eastern traditions. But it doesn't just have to be a chant. All 5 senses are involved. And so there's a tonality when we're presencing. It brings us into the landscape of our soul. And that's why I call the work Terrain of Essence, which is not an original meaning. It's an ancient Sufi terminology, right? And Suf simply means of the cloth and all denominations. It's the heart of any spiritual practice or religion. It's all inclusive. But what it's asking us to do is, anywhere we've gone unconscious and we've moved by impulse, that is a separation from one's authenticity. And so over time, we begin to look at the fabric of this tapestry that we are, right, this delicate landscape. And through the remembering, shamanism would call it a calling back in lost parts of the soul. This would be a reclaiming of one's authentic nature, our true self, right?
And that's not an easy process, is it? Just to kind of realize those things are taking place.
It takes time. It's like, all the different ingredients in a beautiful soup or stew. The flavor doesn't come through till it's cooked a while.
Oh, yeah, and all together, yes.
Yeah. All
Cooked
parts are needed, right?
Sure.
But then that blending, and then the realization of it's always been here all along. Source never abandoned us. We just didn't know Source was available. And it's in us, right? Or however a person perceives that.
And that was great what you mentioned a moment ago about, it's kind of crosses various religions. It's not like it's just for these folks right here, just for right. And that's incredible in itself, and so needed, where we have so much separatism, if you would.
Yeah.
Is more integration, collaboration, but well,
I mean,
within ourselves.
Totally. Well, that's the issue of duality. So from here down, we're of dual nature, but from here up, we're non-dual, right? So we have both qualities within us all the time. When we go into separation, which we do constantly as a human being, then that separation or that duality creates a defense mechanism. Because if I'm divided, right,
Yes.
then I'm going to defend wherever I'm identified.
Mm-hmm.
But we are literally, higher ground is such a beautiful calling. We are at that juxtaposition as a humanity at this time. So the Aquarian age is bridging the ancient wisdom teachings and science are saying the same thing, right? But now we're being asked to live it. And that's what Jennifer was speaking to, how we live it, right?
And that's the important piece right there, isn't it?
Right. It's not an experience to go after. It's every moment having that self-reflective capacity to call oneself, like, wait a minute, that felt funky. Let me check in with that, right? No defending it.
Yeah.
Or if we are, to be aware of that, right? Compassionately. Right.
Yeah. And that's quite a process, but kind of like, and it's kind of like the evolution of kind of attaining, trying to attain higher ground. That's a wonderful, here's how it's taking place, how it is evolving, and not always an easy path.
No. I really shied and have shied a lot from using the words higher, lower. But in ancient terminologies, in the Dead Sea Scrolls, the head is the higher, the middle ground, and the lower ground, right? But it is, as we're standing as a human on our feet, this is the lower part, the instinctual brain. This is the middle part, the emotional brain.
The heart,
This is the higher part, the cognitive, or, the thinking brain. And so integrating all of that is truly the higher ground in the truest meaning of the meaning, being our better self. And that's really what the work is about. Can I show up to the better me?
So all along the way, kind of learning, gathering tools, if you would, ways of how can I attain that. That's the marvelous piece, isn't it? And to kind of watch that happen with someone is, I don't know, does it get any better?
Yeah. I would like to add that then there's a confusion about the mind. And so then a lot of people believe that the ego is their higher self.
Yeah.
But the ego is learned behavior out of stimulus and response, and the stories we made up about that, right? And so the head center is very interesting because it's dualistic in the hemispheres, but in the center line, we have the pituitary and pineal, which is the third eye that focuses toward source self, the essence of ourself, our light. That's the higher ground. And so then the mind, the final frontier, is this pendulation between the egoistic identity and the essential identity. Which am I really? But in a human form, I am of both, but the I amness is what continues on, the essence.
Absolutely.
And so the soul body integrates. The soul is is enmeshed in our body, this is the one that sees it all unconditionally and uses the material of our human physical experience and is of the light of our essential self and comes together, right, and is our conscience. And so in this beautiful teaching that I am so grateful to my teachers for, and for that talent agent that said, well, you should work with a voice person who was a student of these teachers, who then said, I think you may want to try this workout, because I was falling apart. I was having a total meltdown, which without that support brought me to a suicidal edge. Is my life over at 26, right?
Tough spot to be, isn't
And
it?
this is 40
Wow.
years later.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's like really having to live the work. It was not easy.
Amazing, isn't it?
But that's, for everybody, the work is not easy, right? But it's satisfying.
And if you can get behind that part, you know, don't worry about we all want it quick and easy, and
Right.
but is it satisfying?
Yeah.
By really speaking to my true self.
Right.
That's
And then there's the instantaneous elixir, that satisfaction, right? We don't need the wine or the drug to give us that sweetness in ourselves. That there is an actual biochemical release, right?
absolutely.
There's a secretion in the brain, and then the glands, like the spleen, excretes. It naturally makes 3/4 cup of alcohol every day.
So who needs the bottle?
We are it.
Well, so much is in here,
So much.
that's for sure.
Right.
What I'd like to ask is if we could kind of wrap it up for right now, but certainly want to see where we want to pick it up from here in the upcoming show. Does that sound good
Yeah.
to you? Yeah.
Yeah,
Any-
and I would just like to thank Jennifer for introducing me to you and just the beauty of all of this synergy.
Same here.
Living
Thank you
the
for
work.
coming.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because the two of you have introduced me to someone and to some folks that, wow, it's like, it's incredible, isn't it? The sharing.
It is.
The
Thank
fabric.
you both. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
And that's humanity. We're in this together. Yeah.
I don't think everybody quite sees that,
Not
right?
yet.
Or feels
Or-
it, and that's,
Let's say it doesn't know it yet. They haven't come to the place of self-knowing,
yes, yeah,
right?
yeah. Definitely. Wow. So how about if we close for today, and we'll pick it up in a little bit. But thank you for tuning in, and we will see you
Great.
soon.
Thank you,
Thank
Buck.
you. Oh, you're welcome.
Thank
Thank
you.
you too.
Thank you.